Good day. My name is Julie Morrison, and I am a member of the SAL Professional Learning and Development Committee. We want to welcome all of you to our March 2024 SAL Structured Conversation. So whether you are on spring break now or will go on spring break, or maybe you don't have a spring break, we are happy that you are here to celebrate spring with us and our presenters. So SAL and our committee are committed to involving, featuring, and representing diverse perspectives and identities in our offerings and to meet all of your professional needs. You can help us achieve this goal by submitting a structured conversation proposal of your own if you are inspired by Natasha and Gavin today. We are excited to announce we have several that have been coming in already, but we would welcome even more. I put some information in the chat for you to ponder as you are here today. Now, during our presentation today, we invite you to participate by asking questions, sharing comments, and providing feedback through the chat function, because we will be monitoring it and we will have some time at the end for some Q&A. Now, to get us started, we invite you to put your name and your role in the chat so our presenters can get a sense of who is in our audience today. All right, I'm waiting for the first person to pop their name and role into the chat. Get those fingers warmed up. And without further ado, I do want to turn this over to our fabulous presenters. I am going to welcome Gavin Henning and Natasha Jankowski. They will be doing brief introductions of themselves, and then they're going to be sharing their thoughts on integrating AI into student affairs assessment. So please join me in welcoming them. You know, if you want to throw a reaction up there, otherwise just get ready to listen, and I'm sure be wowed by everything they're going to share today. Now, Natasha, Gavin, take it away.
Gavin, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, welcome, everybody. My name is Gavin Henning. I use he, him, his pronouns. Professor of Higher Education at New England College in Central New Hampshire, where I direct our Doctor of Education programs. And Natasha teaches in our program, which I'm very excited about. And I'm Master of Science in Higher Education Administration program. And I am also the director of our Center for Innovation in Teaching, Learning, and Scholarship.
Thank you, Gavin. Delighted to teach in your program with you. Absolutely love it. I'm Natasha. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the former executive director of the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment, and I love all things assessing student learning. Get very excited about that. And I am so excited that we are in conversation with you today on thinking about what can we do with generative AI in student affairs assessment to make our lives and our jobs easier, and really, you know, position this to be a helpful tool in what we're doing. So we will be in conversation with you. I want to think of this as a community piece in time. And so let me share some things, and I'll get our slides pulled up to get us going. So if you're like, what are we doing today? I will tell you. All right. So welcome. You already know it's Gavin and I, but what are you going to walk away from learning today? If you were wondering, well, I'm happy to share with you 2 key learning outcomes. We can't do something on assessment without having some learning outcomes tied to it. So at the end of our conversation, we really want to ensure that you are able to describe how you can use generative AI for student affairs assessment, maybe even walk away with some new ideas that you want to try or some plans to implement some things within your own space and your own work. But I also want to make sure that you're leaving by identifying issues to think about when using generative AI for student affairs assessment. So Gavin and I have some key areas that we're like, we need to move forward and be proactive, but with caution and insight and sort of a delicate lens, using it wisely and with compassion. Along the way, I do want to encourage you to ask questions, share resources with one another. We are all in this together, and so there might be things that you're aware of. This moves so fast that please feel free to put those in chat. There will also be time where you'll be able to learn from each other in breakout rooms later. And of course, we'll share various resources with you so you can keep the conversation going beyond today, because this is more of a start than it is a finish. You might be asking yourself, how are we going to do all of that in the time that we have? Well, we have a plan, so we will follow our plan. And this is, first, I'm going to start with a brief overview of just kind of what generative AI is and why it's causing such a stir in higher education, just kind of level set, make sure we're on the same page. I do have a few activities and a poll that we'll do in just a moment to see where everyone is. But Then I want to sort of think about, Gavin is going to share, how can we use this in our student affairs assessment? He'll use a demo to do some things to show you what you can and might be able to do. But we also want to make sure that you have time to talk to each other. So then we'll move into breakout rooms that you can share what you're doing or thinking or exploring. You don't need to turn videos on. You can use chat. You can figure out what makes sense in your breakout rooms to do that in a comfortable manner. And then we'll close out our time by thinking about those. What do we need to consider in advancing this work? And of course, leaving some time for Q&A. So let us get going. To get started, I'm going to tell you these instructions before we do it. So don't be an overachiever and read and start putting things in. All right. So hold on how we'll do this. What I'd love for you to do is think about and type, but don't hit enter. So it doesn't show up in chat. Just type it in, but don't enter it into chat yet. The first word that comes to mind when you hear AI. So when someone's like, oh, generative AI and assessment, what's the first word that comes to mind? Now, hold it for just a second. When I tell everyone to go, you'll go ahead and hit enter then, and we'll share it with the group all at once. So it'll all kind of come in. But so right now, think about your word, type your word in, and hold on to it. Don't share. Is that enough time? Do you need more time? I don't know if anyone has a really long word. You good? All right. So if you have your word, go ahead and hit enter. Let's see what your words all that come up. That's just really fun for me as a presenter to be like, woo! Yes, I apologize. But it's the closest we can get to kind of like a word cloud and these things and feeling about it. So we've got a lot of like unknowns, some particular things like chat GPT, so actual like particular AIs, helper, scary, fun, computer science. Yes, these are the robots that will take over our world. Thank you so much. Concerning, yes, all of these things. And I will say it's really hard for me to pick just one word when I think about in relation to it. So I completely understand. Now, I have one more thing that I would like to ask you to participate in, and that is going to be a poll. Because I would love to know sort of where you are in relation to those spaces. So if I go in here, do you see a poll? You should see a poll. And it will ask you, when it comes to generative AI and student affairs assessment, pick the one that's closest to where you are. These are first choice options. You can't cover the whole range of things. So you've heard of it, but that's about it. You're like, nah, people have said things. I've seen emails. Versus I've played around with it some. I've gotten into it. I've dabbled a little. Versus those that are like, I use this in my work. This is something that I've used in my own work. You don't need to do this on the daily, but just you have at some point in time. Or if none of these fit you and where you are, then that will be an option too. And I will give you just a little more time to complete before I end it. Great participation, by the way. Thank you for being so. Okay. Good job following instructions on the chat, because that's a hit or miss on the like, hold it before you go. There's always someone that's like, I have a thing. So well done there. All right. I will end the poll and I will share the results. So we have more of a, we've played around with it some. It's a good group, which is great, but we have quite the mix, which I think is pretty typical for where we are in our conversations on AI. So I will then just do a very short, I'll stop sharing that one, overview of what it is and why it's causing a stir. I'll spill the sip of tea on this one, and to get us set up and started to make sure we're all on the same page. So just to level set, this is not comprehensive. This is not inclusive of a variety of nuanced points, but overall, key things to know. AI is not new, and it is not new to us in higher education. It has been around for a long time. We've been using it in higher education for a wide variety of things. It's used in Google search engines. We use this in Turnitin's plagiarism detection functions. YouTube recommendations are based all on the kind of same facial recognition on your phone, if you do anything like that. We've been using it in higher ed in student success and retention efforts, automated admission essay review and grading, personalized learning paths, intelligent tutoring systems. All of these things are AI informed and generated. It's the different part is the widely accessible, user-friendly interface now that have come from generative places where you can put in a prompt and get work products out of it. Whether those work products might be something that look like a paper we've assigned to students, or agendas, or draft learning outcomes. And in these various tools, it's being picked up increasingly by students. It's built from large language models. So what that means is it's trained, you train it on a vast majority of text, images, and audio, and it does algorithms to do predictions basically on what's most likely to come next based on what it's been trained on. All right, so pattern recognition is a lot of the things that are going into it in the, again, very high level. The user interfaces include space where you can provide a prompt, but there are places we need to be cautious about that. We'll talk about that later at the end of today. And it's getting better. This is the worst it's going to be. It's consistently improving over time. And it's very hard to tell the types of tasks that it's good or bad at. So we need to verify, we need to look at things, and it can convincingly lie because it's just producing the next predicting opportunity to come around. So we'll talk about some of those issues and concerns at the end. But if you're going, what are some of these tools? ChatGPT, probably the most known at this point in time, but there are a wide variety of tools that are helpful embedded in other tools that we use. Here are some. I invite you to add others into the chat. And some of these are very helpful to your work or your students, or I recommend a lot of these for if you're making a case to administrators on a budget and you want some quick citations to put on it. Some of these can be really helpful to you to find that and put it together. And we'll share additional resources at the end too. But why is it that higher education is so nervous about generative AI and the things that are going on? Well, in part, because it's requiring us to rethink assessment in relation to major issues of academic integrity. And so a large variety of the conversation has been taken over by faculty on writing assignments. That's sort of the big piece on issues of integrity, along with what about work task design? What if I'm telling a student employee to do something and they just put it in ChatGPT and kick it back out to me? And are we all right? Where do we need someone to cite that they've done engaged with this? What are the ethical ramifications for that? How do we teach students to use this in their work when they leave? And so AI can also be used to answer exam questions. It can't be detected. We can't tell when someone's used it for something. And so there's concern around it. There's also concern around equity and bias that are built into the models. I invite you, if you're have pressing concerns, please feel free to use the chat as a place to get this out. We're happy to hear about it. But that's quick level setting to get us on the page. What I'd love to do now is pass it to Gavin, who's going to talk about how AI can be used in student affairs assessment, so to make our jobs and our lives a bit easier. So Gavin, I will pass
Great,
it to
thanks, Natasha. So yeah, as Natasha said, the biggest conversation in higher, at least on the academic side, is about the use of AI for cheating. And I really want to get our faculty past that because there's so many opportunities. And I dropped a link into the chat that actually Julie gave a better link. It's a book called Power and Prediction. And it was really an eye-opening book because it really demonstrated to me how AI can really be beneficial in actually addressing some, not only what the authors call point solutions, but actually system solutions. How can we actually make some big changes? And I'm thinking specifically about generative AI and student affairs assessment. Is I'm sure all of you have run into the biggest challenge is I don't have the time to do this. And some folks say I don't necessarily have the tools to do this, or I don't have the skill to do this. Well, generative AI is here to help you. So let's talk a little bit about. Let's start with think about the assessment cycle. And first of all, it can be used to draft, review, or revise outcomes. The cool thing is you can just ask it, which we'll show you in a second, create some outcomes for me. Create some outcomes using a certain taxonomy. You could input some outcomes and have it critique it for some reason, for some way. You could actually have the AI critique it for, to what extent are these, aligned with Bloom's taxonomy. You can create rubrics around all this stuff. And so it's really powerful to do some of this work. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, you may not necessarily want the output exactly the way it comes out. You might want to tweak it a little bit. You might want to say, change this or update this. But it's, I think the key is we have to critically, kind of review the output because there are so many issues with it, but it also might not be exactly what we want. Let's move on. So assessment design and data collection. So you can actually ask generative AI, whatever tool you're using. I prefer ChatGPT. Design an assessment process for X. Identify the different ways to collect data. It will actually even create interview protocols for you, survey questions. They may not be great, but it's a starting point. So just imagine how much time you could save when you already have a rough draft. It can even develop informed consent documents. So it can do all of that stuff. It's going to save a ton of time, even if you end up tweaking some of that. And then the analysis. This is where I think it's really powerful. Is it can do statistical analyses. But this is where you really need to double check this. Because if you use the free version of ChatGPT, it can't compute an accurate mean of even 10 items. And so we have to make sure we don't assume that it's going to get it correct. And so if you want really good statistical analyses, you're going to have to use something else or a ChatGPT plus. And as Natasha said, it hallucinates. And these are language models. They're not number models. So that's why they're really good at words, but maybe not necessarily good for stats. But it can do thematic analysis. You can add in a transcript and it will identify themes for you. You can create a rubric based on some outcomes, or you can actually, for example, you might want to create a case study that you might do in some activity, and it'll create a rubric for you. It can also evaluate a paper, and we have some faculty who are starting to do that. But we'll talk about some caveats about why that might not be a really good idea. And then reporting. So we can create tables, charts, figures. Again, the paid version of ChatGPT Plus is a little bit better than that. The other versions may not be able to create them as well. Create outlines for slide decks. Really can do all that reporting for you. And you might want to think about what are the best prompts for that. And we'll give you some of those prompts in a second. So here's some other ways. So not only can it help you with each step of the assessment process, but it can give you some suggestions for how can you make some recommendations for change. Change and really closing the loop is the biggest challenge that we have with assessment. We may collect all that data, have some great findings, but then nothing's done with it, or we can't figure out how we really manage the politics of assessment to get people to actually use these. And so AI can give you some suggestions for that. Hey, if you're coming up for accreditation, it may give you some ideas for how to address those. Pop in the accreditation standards. We're actually right now getting ready for our 10-year site visit for NECHI. I just reviewed our self-study this morning because they're coming in April. But earlier, I just said I put in the standards and what data do I need? And it gave me some really good suggestions. We also know equity-centered assessment is really important. So it can identify some strategies for doing that, especially given the fact that the output of AI is biased. And so you can actually use AI to actually kind of critique itself, which is nice. And then if you're creating assessment committees or things like that, it can help you develop some mission statements or responsibilities. So really the opportunities are whatever you can think of. So AI and whatever platform you want to use can really help support all of that. Okay, so let's do some demos. So I have some prompts that I've used, and I'm gonna kind of show some folks what you can do. So the first thing is, imagine that you are running a weekend leadership retreat for sophomores, and you want to create some outcomes. So one thing you might be able to do, let me drop this prompt in here. You could ask it to create 5 learning outcomes for a weekend leadership retreat for college sophomores. And I think it's helpful to say you want college sophomores and not just sophomores, because it may choose high school sophomores. And I want a specific taxonomy. And so the more specific you can be with the prompts, the better. And so this is what it will do. It provides a little bit of an overview of Lefebvre's medicine wheel. And what I like about the medicine wheel, if you're not familiar with it, it's a more holistic perspective, builds in spiritual dimensions as well as the physical, emotional, and cognitive. But it'll actually create outcomes for you. Now you may say, yeah, I want these outcomes. And they call them intended learning outcomes. Sometimes ChatGPT will call them ILOs. But let's say you love these outcomes, they look great. So you might ask ChatGPT, how would you assess these? So Let's drop that in there. Oops. And it'll give some suggestions on that. And so it's going to give you one assessment method for each outcome, but you can ask it for more. So I might say identify 3 assessment methods for each outcome. So I have to wait for it to finish giving me the output. And obviously we don't have the time to go through and read everything, but I would just give you a sense of what it can do, because you can play with this on your own. But it'll give you multiple outcomes or multiple ways to assess everything. And so, case study analysis. Maybe we want to actually figure out how to implement that. And so we might want to ask ChatGPT to create a case study for the intellectual dimension outcome. And what it's going to do is going to create a case study. Now, you may not like this, so you might want to try something else, but it's going to outline what that case study is, what the elements of are, the different tasks. You know, honestly, if I were to create a case study from scratch, I don't think I'd have this much detail. And if you didn't like that one, you say, draft another case study. And you can keep on asking it, and you could be more specific. Maybe you want to focus on something related to an issue on campus or a specific discipline. Certainly it will create those case studies for you. But the case study is created, you got to figure out how to assess it. So you could ask ChatGPT to create a rubric. So what it's going to give you, and if you want 5 levels, you can add 5 levels. I think 4 levels is the default, but it's going to align with the elements of that case study. But this really doesn't look like a typical rubric. I like it in a table. Because I want to be able to download it and copy it into a Word document to use or some other format. But it takes a little bit more time, again, because it's doing something that's not necessarily specific language. You got to create a table. So it takes a little more time to do the analysis, to figure out how to actually create that table. And you can kind of follow the purple circle going around. So the key sometimes is continuing to refine this. Now, I really do like rubrics, but one of the downsides is that the rubrics don't necessarily provide opportunity for feedback. So I might say add a column for feedback to the student. Let's see what it'll do.
While we're waiting, just briefly, Gavin, do you have the paid ChatGPT account? Is that what we're watching here? Okay.
Yep, it's a paid one. So it's $20 a month. If you really want to use ChatGPT for a lot of this stuff, the paid version is worth it, especially for the statistical analysis. But it's going to add a comment box. So that might be something you might want to think about. So let's take a look at some sample data. So I think one of the great opportunities is to do some analysis. So I have a sample data set. And the nice thing with the new ChatGPT Plus, you can actually drop any kind of document in. So I'll drop in the sample data, which is about, it's a short survey about an LGBTQ center. So again, since it's running numbers, it's going to take a little bit of time to run these analyses. So it's going to give me the average, the standard deviation, give me those key things. Then I can actually ask it to run p-tests by demographic categories. Let's see what it will do. So Ted asked me directly in the chat, does the free version allow to submit data files? I am not sure. I've not tried it. So I'd have to take a look at that. Oh, there it is. So might have to actually make some changes. So this is what's really interesting. In the Excel file, I have gender, there's an extra space. And so it's actually going to correct that so it can run the data, run the analyses. So you can even do some basic data cleaning if you want. And so it's a really powerful tool. Okay, so let me share you a little bit about the thematic analysis. So I have some sample focus group transcripts. So I'm going to run a thematic analysis. And well, I see some questions about de-identifying student data and things like that. I know Natasha's paying attention, as is Julie, and we can address some of those afterwards, because those are some of the issues we need to we'll need to talk about. So it actually talks about the process it's going to go through to do that. I could even suggest using a certain coding approach. And then it's going to create the themes. But what I might want to do is, I'm thinking ahead, if I want to create a report, I might want some quotes. So this is the themes with 2 representative quotes. So it's actually pulling quotes from that transcript that align with those themes. So let's end this up. Create a report. So it's going to give you an executive summary. Then it's going to give you a quick overview. Now, this, I wouldn't necessarily just copy and paste this in and then send this off, but it gives me the text to make a prettier report. It gives me the basic information. You know, and I'll be honest, I just figured this out by trying things. And so just try and see if it works. You know, I had to create some sample data. I'll stop sharing right now because that's kind of what I wanted to share. But, you know, I created some sample transcript data just to see what it would do. I created some sample data, quantitative data in an Excel spreadsheet because I wanted to double check to make sure it got the data correctly. So I put a huge chunk of data, probably like 300 records in there, and the average didn't look correct to me. And so I put it in Excel, computed the mean, and realized it was incorrect. So I said, well, can it even do 10? And that's where I said with the free version, it couldn't even compute an average for 10 items. And so if you really want to use it for statistical analyses, it really requires bumping up and using the paid version. But the best thing is just to kind of to play around with it and see how it works. Continue to hone the prompts to get to kind of what you want and see what it produces. So that's the overview of the demo. Natasha, do we want to answer some of the questions, or we want to move on to the next thing? I see a few comments and questions in the chat, but I'm not sure what would be most useful for us.
I was thinking, let's answer a few questions, and then we can send them in to talk about what they might be doing or what they're thinking about doing from it.
Cool.
So quite a few focused on sort of the integrity of the data.
Yeah.
What to put in. And so I would say at this point, if there's anything that's a free, if it's an unsecured model, you can pull out of it whatever goes into it.
Right.
So you do not want any identifying information. This also happened with students that like put in their resumes to get feedback on their resumes, and now they're like home address and information. It's available on these things. Like don't put student information in. It is not secure.
Right.
I will, with that in mind, though, there are some that have select institutional licenses where they're like, this is our particular server, this is our space where we can do it. In that case, you are secure in a way that you are not in these other tools. But if you're going, oh, this can aid me in something and I'm just using this online version, de-identify anything before you put it in. Do not put any personal information in these. Do not put any text. If you're like, I would love to have my article that I just summarized in this, people can pull your article right out of that. And so be mindful, find your librarians that want to talk about copyright infringement with you know, give them a hug and take them to lunch, and just read the agreement to whenever all of these are going into, and they're changing and they're updating. So whenever you're reading anything about like what is happening to my data, take a look at it. And there's so many tools, choose tools based on what's going on with the data, what makes sense for what you're doing, but don't put in personal information. There.
Can I ask a related question to that that was inspired by these questions that came in? So you're talking about like gathering student information that you might then be putting in. What kinds of what kinds of notice do you give to people who might be filling information out that this may go into a Gen AI model? Do you warn them, you know, the submitters to surveys and such?
So I'll say I'm sort of seeing two ways that people are handling this, and Gavin, love your thoughts on this as well. One is if it's anything that was already publicly available information, anything that was on an institution website, anything that's in a handbook anywhere, it's free game. So in a lot of the work that's been done on mapping, like here's a program that I have that I'm offering in my student affairs unit. How does this map to institutional learning outcomes? How does this align to our strategic plan? How does this connect to something else? All of that, it's like, here's all this information that already exists. Use these things as the tools to get into it, and that's not a problem. In the space where I'm creating new information that I want to put in to analyze, it becomes a part of that initial, if it's a survey questionnaire, if it's a part that's part of what you're agreeing to in the consent part that you're offering in that area. So those are sort of the main two, but that's a spectrum of things. Gavin, I'm not sure if you have others.
Yeah, I'm the chair of our institutional review board, and we talked about this last fall. And so, what do we need to be thinking about? So we updated our IRB request form, and we actually have a subsection for the use of AI. So I dropped that request form in the chat. You may want to think about those questions, or think, that's the kind of information. For our IRB committee, the biggest issue was transparency. Are we telling people that was used for any of this, and are they aware of that? And the other thing I think we need to keep in mind is a lot of folks don't know the power of AI. And so, one of the questions I'm seeing in the IRB research world is, can folks really give informed consent when AI is used? Do they know enough about it? So, what we talked about is we may have to provide some education beyond the normal consent information about what AI is and how that information may be used. If we're putting, if we're going to use AI to do the analyses. But like, Natasha said, there are a ton of free tools out there to do analyses. So, AI may not, one of these AI platforms may not be your best tool for privacy and confidentiality reasons. There may be other tools to think about. But that's where I think those are the key things to be considering.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then anytime that I've used AI to generate something, whether it's been an agenda for a meeting, whether it's been put me together a quick email, like invitation letter or something like that. I always include if this has been like initially, initial generation done by AI and which one I use. And part of that is not just because I think it's important to tell people where you're using it, but it's also educational to say like, this was a really good tool for these things. And if you're interested in that and you're like, weren't even thinking about that in relation to AI, like here's an opportunity to do it. I also like to use AI and when I'm doing my presentations to say like, what would a typical presentation on this topic include? To see, am I hitting the main points? Is there something that's not going to go? I generally like mine. I'm very biased towards myself. I'm like, that was very good of you, Natasha. I like how you were doing it. But I do like to have it as sort of that checkpoint of, is there something that I just wasn't even thinking about that I should include or work in or get into that space? So yes, if you're using it, help tell people where and how it was useful or where it wasn't in that regard.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think, Gavin, if you're all right with it, I'd love to start moving people into breakout rooms and give you some time to chat with each other, either on just reactions to what you're thinking about experiencing. Hold on, I'll show you some questions that we have. So you can, if you're like, I need questions, this is a lot. Give me some questions to think about. Let me give you a few. So you can either in your breakout rooms talk about how you've used AI, if you have, to support your student affairs assessment efforts, or if you're like, oh, I'm getting ideas, you can talk about how you might use AI to support your student affairs assessment efforts. Or if you're like, I can't yet, I've got some concerns that I need to talk about and get around, have a conversation about concerns that you have about AI, particularly within student affairs assessment. So you can either talk about how you might use it, how you are, or concerns that you're having about it. That makes sense. So let me stop my share, see if anyone has questions about that, and then I will open up some breakout rooms for you.
I just put the questions in the chat, so if you want to take a look at those.
Okay. We have here we go. You're going to have about 5 to 6 participants per room. So be mindful of each other's time. Use chat if you need that. If you're like, I'm not in a place where I can talk to each other, decide how you want to do. We'll come back in a little bit and you're welcome to share about that, but we'll talk some more about caveats and concerns and things that you should do. So rooms are created and opened. Please feel free to join and we'll see you in a bit. And I will pause the recording. I won't stop it. I'll just pause it. Zoom recording. Thank you, Julie. All right, welcome back, everyone. I am sure there were great conversations happening and you were right in the middle of like the most thought-provoking point and you got pulled back into the room, and I apologize. That little 60-second countdown is tiny in the corner. But welcome back. We're delighted to have you. If you have someone or you're willing or excited, please share in the chat something from your conversations in the breakout rooms. Unfortunately, we don't have time to kind of go around and hear from everyone, but I would love to invite you to include your comments or your thoughts or your reflections in there. And then while you're doing that, Gavin and Julie, do you have thoughts you want to share from our conversation while we were chatting?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing we talked about is that we forgot to mention is that you can actually create your own GPTs. And so I found this it's super easy. And I found this really helpful because I wanted to create something for our faculty and staff regarding equity-centered assessment. And so the nice thing is I could input some information that's really specific to equity-centered assessment, making sure I don't upload anything that is copyrighted or owned by somebody else, but it actually produces some starting question for me, which is really good. The other thing is I created is a persistence assistant. So I'm on our retention committee. We actually have a meeting later this afternoon, and we're starting to build a retention strategic plan. So I built a GPT around there, and I put in some different models and retention models that we can use. And so the cool thing is you can create these really easily. I have one on inclusive teaching. This one, data analysis and reporting, is something that somebody else put out. But if you want to dig into those, you just click on the Explore GPT, and you can search for public ones. But if you want to create your own, just click the create. And essentially, when you go to create, it walks you through all the steps. It asks you a bunch of questions about what you want to do. And at one point it said, do you want to make improvements? I'm like, I guess so, but I didn't know what kind of improvements I wanted to make. And so I asked, what kind of improvements can I make? And it said, you can do this, this, this. Okay, let's do that. And so it really made the process easier. But, again, you need to have that free version of the paid version of ChatGPT.
And just because I find it delightful, there is a Captain Kirk chat that gives you feedback and advice on teaching and learning as though it is Captain Kirk doing it. And so you can do all these wonderfully insightful tools, but you can also be like, I would like a letter written as though it's King Lear. Requesting more money from our administrative overlords. Like, so if you also need to have some like therapeutic moments that you use ChatGPT for, it is there for you in those spaces.
Yeah.
All right. Let me share last couple of slides for you and round us out. So I wanted to end with some caveats, concerns, and considerations in this point, because this is something that Gavin and I talk about all the time. So I thank you all for your participation, but there's a lot of other things to think about in this work and in using anything with generative AI. One of those is centering equity in all of this. Generative AI models include bias. It is based on what they're trained on. The things that they are trained on are biased. You can influence training. You can say, learn these things, use these tools, train yourself on this, remove this from it, but you have to prompt it for things that are equitable. You have to say, I want equitable pieces. I want examples that do these things. You have to ask running into it. And just because it's run by computer does not remove the human-based models upon which their training is derived. So if you're interested in this, there are some really beautiful documentaries on the topic of the AI gaze and sort of the potential for harm and perpetuating inequities when we're not intentionally using these tools to address equity. You also have inequity in paid models versus unpaid models. So if you're like, let's use this with our students, and students don't have access to that, this is an issue as well. We know there's a huge gap from the pandemic of our students' access to technology. And so if this makes it easier for certain groups of students to do work, but not for others, we have a bit of an issue. So consider who has access to this technology. Is it affordable? Do we need to provide opportunity and grants or covered subscriptions and logins for our students? Does this stuff require internet electricity that's routinely unavailable or unstable for certain of our student populations? When we are using it, are we ensuring that our prompt language we're teaching our students involves cultural nuance to what we're asking? And are we working on the things that it's trained on in that space? So center equity in all of that work. Check the accuracy. Gavin and I are both like, it lies, it hallucinates. The other term for this is bot shit. It puts out things and it sounds very convincing, but it's making statistically informed guesses that appear very confident and plausible, but are totally incorrect. So use this as brainstorming opportunities. Always go back, look at the output, edit the output, make sure that it's working on those things, and keep an eye on which tools are good for what at what point in time. There are some tools that are good at certain things. It's not very clear what those are. It's a great space for a community to say this tool worked really well for these things and share that information around. But so just be mindful of what you're doing with the accuracy space. Know that there is bias within that too. And so if you're also on the qualitative data thematic analysis pieces, you have to ask some things like elevate out certain voices in the responses, and it can, but it's things that you need to ask for. So review any of the output that comes out, and then also think about refining your prompts. Privacy, we talked about that. Don't put personal information in. You're like, this is amazing. No, do not share it. It will come out. And I think we've said enough about those kinds of things. So I'll leave it at that. And then act ethically. Claim if you're using AI for it. Help pass that forward to others. Model for our students how they should use this in their workplace, and help give them that learning. If our faculty are like, none shall pass, this will not come into our space, our students are going to be using this in their work. They're going to be asked about how they're using it, what they've learned on it. We can really lead in this space to help our students engage in it. And we have, we are teaching ourselves and each other, but we also have as educators that responsibility to teach our students about the potential of this and ethical implications. So yes, anything else?
I just want to add on. So for the equity piece, one easy thing I found is when I built the chat GPTs one of the things I built in there is use a critical theory lens when providing output. And actually I provided some content from a web page to say, use this approach, because I wanted to be very specific about this. So something like that's really easy. Now, if you don't have the paid version and you're not creating your own GPT, you could just add that in as a prompt. It creates the output. You may want to refine it by adding that in or add it in the original prompt. And then the other thing in terms of accuracy and the equity piece, I use this to help create a teaching and learning course for our doctor program that I taught this past fall. And we had a module on power and oppression in higher education. So I actually used it to create a list of milestones in U.S. higher education that had an impact on power and oppression. And so it gave me some great things, including the Moral Act and some Civil Rights Act. But what it didn't do, it didn't include the second Moral Act, which created the HBCUs. And so to me, that was a huge gap that was missing. So I think the one caveat is you kind of have to know some information when you're doing those to be able to analyze it. Because if I didn't know about the second Moral Act in the creation of HBCUs, I wouldn't have known that was missing. And I think that was critical for the conversation that we had in class. And so this is where I think when we begin to think about the power of AI, I think you still need to have people reviewing and analyzing. And the other thing that Natasha and I were talking about as well is that the other caveat is this could make assessment too easy, where we actually becomes a crutch, or we don't feel like we need to learn all these things. But again, like any other tool, garbage in is garbage out. And so, we've got to kind of know what we're doing, at least basically, so we can engineer the prompts accurately. We've got to know a little bit basically so we can critically review the output. So at this point, I'm not, I don't think we're at a point where AI is going to take over everything, because there still need to be people with knowledge and be able, and critical analysis to be able to really kind of take a look at the output and get the output that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that, we were talking while you were in your breakout rooms, and I shared an example of an institution that had used AI to put in their student employee job descriptions, their institutional learning outcomes and their student affairs learning outcomes, saying align these job descriptions to these learning outcomes, and then tell me what would be artifacts from work tasks that would count as meeting these learning outcomes. And one of the things that they did in working with that was that didn't stop the conversations. They were very clear, like, we need to have collective unit conversations on what comes out. It is not, we pass this work to AI and now we're just done, and whatever comes out, and we did it, we looked at it and said, oh, that's fine, and then moved on with our day. It was that made our in-person conversation much faster, better. We were able to jump ahead to the parts that really mattered of how are we seeing our work connect? Where do we see these parts of us being in community with each other? And so it was a better use of time, not a removal of people's time. And so I think in that assessment, ensuring that we still have space for our conversation with each other, very helpful. But how can we make that conversation more meaningful? What do we need to take out that we can think of otherwise? All right. If you want more resources, we have them. They're in the slides. We will share slides with you as well. But here are some that are just like list of tools that people keep track of, and other groups that you can join and things like that. But I also want to be mindful we need to pass it back to our
Yes.
staff
I know.
to close out.
I can speak for all of us. We don't want the two of you to stop. We want you to keep
Yeah.
going, but I know we all have commitments that we need to get to. So this has been fabulous. I know that Gavin popped his contact information in there because I'm thinking you want his equity chat GPT thing. I don't know all the lingo yet.
Yeah.
His special chat GPT. I'm sure he can provide that for you.
Yeah.
The other thing that we were talking about briefly as you were all broken out was this is a hard thing to do. You might not know how to write the prompt. Some questions came up around, what should I use? Gemini or Copilot or Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Sal listserv, go to the Sal listserv. Somebody there is going to have some good answers for you. And that's a way that we can all learn. So I encourage everybody to use that as a tool for how would you write this prompt or what's the best Gen AI to use. So please do that. And on that note, I know we are almost out of time. So please give love in your reactions in the chat to our incredible presenters, Natasha Jankowski and Gavin Henning. On behalf of the SAL Professional Learning and Development Committee, thank you very much for coming. You will get a recording. You will get the materials. You will get a link to provide feedback. So please do that as well. And then please consider joining us in April, on April 17th, when we have Sarah Finney and Katarina Schaefer coming. They are going to be talking about establishing a partnership with the full division and the assessment office. So you're not going to want to miss that one either. You can also submit your own proposal if you want to talk about something as well. Check out our SAL Structured Conversation page. Thank you all very much for coming. Big round of applause for our presenters. Thank you for answering everybody's questions, because I do think we got to everybody's questions. But if they didn't get to yours, then reach out to them. And Natasha is showing us how if you make certain gestures, if you have a Mac and you have Zoom, you get fancy things behind you. So thank you all for joining us today. Come back and see us again in our next structured conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, folks.
Thanks all.